Okay, so my name is Julian Puccini, and I'm going to talk about the trade barriers for my global economics class. So, the first trade barrier I'm going to talk about are the tariffs. Tariffs are defined as a, a custom taxes imposed by governments on imported goods. The effect of these tariffs is that they increase the price of the foreign goods relative to the national or domestic goods. And the tax is imposed as a percentage of the total cost of the product, and it is called ad valorem. So now I'm going to talk about the tariffs for pros and cons. So first the pros that tariffs may contribute to help in threatened industries. Also, domestic industry can rely on tariffs to compete better against the foreign products, international products, and also that it may create jobs, and tariffs can help national industry and increase the job creation in the country. So the cons are that consumers end up paying higher prices. Consumers are undermined as they pay higher prices in the form of taxes, for example. It deteriorates the country's economy, and it reduces the transaction that would otherwise have occurred and reduces the welfare. Also, it damages the relationship between countries. There is a actual data and an example, and we're going to take the United States tariffs. And by 2008, the U.S. government introduced a series of steel and aluminum tariffs, and there was a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% on aluminum. The objective was to contribute for national industry growth, such as automotive and steel. The impact. And Congressional Budget Office found a negative effect on the economy and a negative correlation between additional tariffs and the GDP growth. So, as you can see in the chart, um, it shows a clear impact of the tariff war between US and China, seen in the introduction of tariffs by 2008 from both countries led to a decline in the world's GDP growth, as you can see in the black line, and a loss in GDP percentage points, that is the light red dotted bars. So in 2020, US tariffs on Chinese exports is at 19.3%, while in 2020, China tariffs on US exports is at 20.9%. And so by 2009, the tariff war had led to a 0.4 and to a 0.6 percentage point decline in the world's GDP and long-term year-over-the-year growth. Impact on both economies, as you can see, as a result of the tariffs in 2018, US GDP growth reduced from 3.3 in 2018 quarter 3 to 2.1 in the third quarter in 2019. Similar to the China's GDP growth, since it fell from 6.9% in 2018 quarter 2 to 6% in 2019 quarter 2. The second trade barrier I'm going to talk about is the subsidies. So they are cash grants or loans offered by the government to businesses. According to the WTO, A subsidy is a financial benefit that gives and an unfair advantage to a business or industry. And there are different types of subsidies, and there's the cash, the tax concessions, the the exemptions, and the loan guarantees and the procurement policies. The pros and the cons for the subsidies. First, the pros. Subsidies offer some sort of financial benefit to an individual, firm, or industry. It increases competitiveness of that firm in international markets, and consumers also may be able to access more affordable products and commodities. And the last pro is that they may increase the supply of a good or service. So the cons. Subsidies, we have a risk of diverting government money, tax money in specific, to inefficient industries. It creates a disincentive. It creates a disincentive for firms to be more efficient. Also, it has higher taxes might be imposed to raise needed funds to subsidize industries. So this might hurt the others as well. And it might create an excess of supply. Subsidies, a real case impact, farm subsidy in the United States. So, first of all, the top states in receiving subsidies are in Texas, Nebraska, Kansas, Arkansas, and Illinois, which received a 39% of the US $7.2 billion. Agriculture, so agriculture in the US makes 5.4% of the economy. It employs 11% of the workers in the states, and corn is the largest and most subsidized crop in the states. The third trade barrier we're going to see is the quotas. A quota is a government imposed trade restriction with the purpose of limiting quantities of goods traded. Countries use quotas to regulate the volume of traded goods. In theory, they boost domestic production by limited foreign competition. Within the United States, there are three forms of quotas, which are absolute, that is absolute quantity restriction, tariff rate, that is different tariff rates for quota levels, and tariff preferences level, that is a tariff preference levels arising from the FTA. Quotas, pros and cons. We're going to start talking about the pros, and that is that quotas are flexible and easily imposed, and are more easily removed than other barriers. Also, it keeps the volume of the imports unchanged despite changes in demand for imports, and thereby leads to foreign exchange savings. Also, it leads to a precise outcomes, and this is because the main outcome is the volume of the imports is unchanged, while the impact of the tariffs is less clear. The cons of the quota are that it may induce corruption as it generates no revenue. The governments might auction the right to import to the highest bidder, and it also creates a monopoly profit for those with import licenses, and it reinforces monopoly growth, since it restricts the competition. and it leads to trade distraction as it concentrates power among importers and exporters. Quotas relocate the impact are the quotas in the solar panel industry. And so in 2018, U.S. administration imposed quotas coupled with tariffs. So there was a 30% tariffs and an aggressive import quota established on imported solar panels from China. So the impact. So the impact was like a result of the decision that undermined the United States solar industry, which by then was responsible for generating 18.7 billion US dollars of the investment in the economy. And so by the time United States imported 85% of its solar panel products. So this is the end of my presentation. I hope you liked it. And as you can see, this is the references that I use for the PowerPoint and where I got the information. And yeah, thank you.